It started subtly. A loaf of bread cost a little more, just a few cents, easily dismissed. Then milk jumped, then eggs. People grumbled, tightened their belts. They blamed the usual suspects, the government, big corporations, foreign wars. No one saw the shadow lengthening. No one heard the faint crystalline chime that accompanied each price hike. It was a sound just beyond normal hearing. A vibration felt in the teeth, in the bones, a precursor to something deeply unnatural seeping into the everyday. The whispers grew louder, not real whispers, not yet. But the murmur of discontent became a chorus. A single apple, once a cheap snack, now demanded a day's wages for some. Rent for a tiny room rivaled a mortgage on a mansion from a decade past. Luxury cars, yachts, private jets, their prices soared into the stratosphere. Yet strangely, the desire for them didn't wane. It intensified. The impossibility fueled a desperate, gnawing hunger. A sickness was spreading through the marketplace, a fever dream of acquisition. The news channels buzzed with economists. They offered complex theories, supply chains, inflation, market corrections. Their faces were masks of strained confidence. Their eyes, however, held a flicker of something else. Fear, confusion. They couldn't explain the sheer predatory nature of these increases. It felt targeted, personal, as if an unseen intelligence was deliberately pushing humanity to a breaking point. The numbers on the screens were no longer just figures. They were taunts. They were dares. This was not normal market fluctuation. This was a perversion. The very fabric of economic reality seemed to fray. People started acting strangely. Arguments erupted in grocery stores over the last discounted can of beans. Friendships fractured over perceived windfalls or crushing debts. The social contract, already strained, began to tear under the pressure of these insane prices. Something dark was feeding on the anxiety. It thrived in the growing desperation. It waited for the inevitable snap. It was the dawn of reality greed. The first true sighting was dismissed as delusion. A late-night stock trader, eyes raw from staring at plummeting portfolios, claimed to see it. He described a figure of pure black, not the absence of light, but a solid, consuming darkness, like a shard of volcanic glass, impossibly large. It moved with an unnatural grace, he babbled. Its surface shimmered, reflecting the frantic, despairing lights of the city. Red cracks, like veins of molten anger, pulsed within its obsidian form. They glowed with an inner, malevolent fire. Its head was not a head, more a helmet, sleek, featureless, tapering to a cruel point. It gave no hint of eyes, yet it saw, it perceived, it judged. From its back, immense wings unfurled, not feathery, not leathery. They were blades, razor-sharp edges of the same black glass, catching the neon glow like instruments of exquisite torture. They sliced the air with a chilling, silent precision. The trader swore they hummed with a low, predatory thrum. He was found weeping, his office trashed, his accounts wiped clean by his own panicked trades. Others began to report similar visions, always at moments of extreme financial stress. A mother unable to afford medicine for her child, a businessman facing ruin, a gambler on a losing streak. The descriptions varied in detail but were chillingly consistent in essence. The black glass entity, the burning red fissures, the terrifying silent wings. It became a phantom of the economic crisis, a boogeyman born from balance sheets and bottom lines. Most people scoffed. Stress, they said, mass hysteria, but those who saw it knew. This was no figment of a stressed mind. It was an architect of that stress. It fed on the ensuing chaos. It was an emissary of this new, brutal reality. The red cracks seemed to deepen, to glow brighter with each new tale of financial ruin, each desperate act committed under the weight of impossible costs. The entity was growing stronger. It was becoming more defined. It was reality greed, manifesting from the collective nightmare of a world priced out of its own existence. Reality greed did not simply appear. It cultivated, it manipulated. Its primary tool was the market itself. The outrageous prices were its seeds. They were planted in the fertile ground of human desire. A simple wish for comfort could curdle into avarice. A need for security could transform into a desperate scramble for more. The entity understood this. It whispered through the ticker tapes. It insinuated itself into financial reports. It made the impossible seem almost attainable, if one was willing to sacrifice enough. The influence was insidious. A person might see a car, a ridiculously expensive car far beyond their means. Logic would dictate they ignore it. But reality greed's influence warped that logic. The price tag itself became a challenge, a symbol of ultimate success. The desire to own it, to conquer that price, would begin to consume their thoughts. They'd work longer hours, they'd cut corners, they'd neglect loved ones. The object itself was secondary. The pursuit, the overcoming of the impossible price became the obsession. This manufactured desire led to heightened greed. People started seeing others not as neighbors, but as competitors, obstacles. If a colleague got a bonus, it wasn't a cause for celebration. It was a source of burning resentment. Why them? Why not me? How can I get more? The entity fanned these flames. It amplified envy. It rewarded ruthlessness. The world became a zero-sum game orchestrated by the unseen horror. Every transaction, every negotiation felt like a battle for survival, even when it wasn't. The psychological toll was immense. Anxiety became a constant companion. Sleep offered no escape as dreams were filled with soaring prices and mocking laughter. Trust eroded, paranoia flourished, the constant pressure to acquire, to keep up, to not fall behind the ever-escalating costs wore people down. Their spirits became brittle, their moral compasses spun wildly, they were being primed. Prepared for a final terrible transaction, reality greed was patient. It knew its victims would eventually break. Elias Vance was a decent man, or he used to be. He was an accountant, meticulous and fair. He lived modestly, he saved diligently. But the world changed around him. His small apartment's rent tripled, his savings devalued daily. The food he bought became plainer, scarcer. Fear, cold and constant, became his shadow. He saw the lavish excesses flaunted by the ultra-rich, their prices mocking his own desperate frugality. He saw them untouched, thriving even in this broken economy. A bitter seed was planted. He started working late, very late. He wasn't just doing his job, he was searching, looking for loopholes, for an edge, for a way to climb out of the pit of his shrinking finances. He began to fantasize about wealth. Not just comfort, but obscene wealth. The kind that could insulate him from this madness. The kind that could buy anything at any price. He saw the new designer watch. Its price tag was a small fortune. He wanted it. He needed it. The desire was a physical ache. His colleagues noticed the change. His usual quiet diligence was replaced by a frantic, almost feral energy. His eyes darted. He muttered to himself about figures, about opportunities. He became secretive, suspicious. He once snapped at a junior clerk for a minor error, his voice laced with an unfamiliar venom. Elias was fraying. The constant bombardment of impossible prices, the seductive whisper of what if, was eroding his carefully constructed self. He started dreaming of black glass, of red glowing cracks. One evening, staring at his meager bank balance, a new thought solidified. A dangerous thought. It wasn't about saving anymore, it was about taking. He'd seen irregularities in a client's extravagant accounts. Untraceable funds. He could divert some, just a little at first, enough for that watch, enough to feel powerful. The idea, once terrifying, now felt like a solution, a key. He didn't know it, but reality greed was very close. It sensed the shift. The final surrender to greed was near. Section 5. The crushing weight of want. Psychological erosion. The desire for more wasn't just ambition, it was a primal scream against the crushing reality of scarcity. When a simple life became an unaffordable luxury, the mind sought escape. It sought power. Reality greed offered a perverse version of that power. It whispered that if you couldn't beat the prices, you had to become someone who could afford them, no matter the cost to your soul. This insidious promise gnawed at the foundations of sanity. It made people question their own values, their own identities. Sleep deprivation became common. How could anyone rest when their financial stability was a tightrope walk over a canyon of debt? The nights were filled with frantic calculations, what to sell, what to sacrifice, who to betray. The entity reveled in this mental anguish. It amplified the anxieties, turning minor worries into monstrous fears. Every unpaid bill felt like a personal failing. Every price increase felt like a targeted attack. The world became a hostile landscape designed to break the human spirit. Relationships suffered terribly. Trust, already a fragile commodity, shattered under the strain. Spouses accused each other of reckless spending or insufficient earning. Children became bargaining chips or symbols of financial burden. The warmth of human connection grew cold, replaced by suspicion and resentment. Reality greed delighted in this isolation. A person alone, consumed by their own desperate wants, was far easier to manipulate, easier to push towards the final fatal act of all-consuming greed. The world outside mirrored the turmoil within. Riots over basic necessities became more frequent. The gap between the haves and have-nots widened into an unbridgeable chasm. Yet even those with wealth were not immune. Their greed became more refined, more rapacious. They sought to consolidate, to control, to own everything, driven by the same irrational fear of not having enough, even amidst plenty. Reality greed's influence was pervasive. It didn't discriminate. It simply sought to corrupt, to push everyone past their breaking point. Section 6. The Midnight Transaction, Reality Greed's Arrival. Elias Vance sat in his dimly lit office. The city hummed outside, a symphony of distant sirens and restless energy. Tonight was the night. He had planned it meticulously. The transfer codes were ready. A few clicks and a fortune, not rightfully his, would flow into his hidden account. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat slicked his palms. This wasn't him. But the watch, the power, the escape. He pushed the lingering doubts away. He deserved this. The world owed him. As his finger hovered over the enter key, the temperature in the room plummeted. The hum of the computer faded. A profound silence descended, broken only by a faint, crystalline cracking sound. Elias looked up. Standing in the darkest corner of the room, where the shadows pooled like ink, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly tall, made of polished black glass. Red fissures, like veins of fire, pulsed with a sickening light across its surface. Its helmet-like head tilted, as if studying him. It was reality greed. Fear, cold and absolute, seized Elias. He couldn't scream, he couldn't move. The entity's presence was crushing. It radiated an ancient, predatory intelligence. Its razor-sharp wings, vast and terrible, were tucked close to its body, yet they seemed to fill the room. They twitched slightly, the edges gleaming in the faint light from his monitor. It made no sound, yet Elias felt its amusement, its satisfaction. He had taken the bait, he had succumbed. The entity glided forward. It moved without walking, a silent, terrifying drift. The red cracks on its chest glowed brighter, hotter. Elias could feel a strange pull, a resonance with the greed that now fully consumed him. He had wanted wealth, he had wanted power, and now the ultimate price was about to be collected. He had made his choice. The transfer was still pending on the screen, but the real transaction, the one that mattered, was about to occur in this cold, silent office. Section 7. Imprint of the Damned, the $500 scar. Reality greed raised one of its bladed wings. The movement was slow, deliberate, almost graceful, if not for the terrifying sharpness of its edge. The black glass gleamed. Elias squeezed his eyes shut, a whimper escaping his lips. He braced for an unimaginable pain, a tearing, a slicing. He thought of the stolen money, the watch he would never wear, the life he had just thrown away. His greed felt like a lead weight in his stomach, a sickening realization of his folly. The wing didn't cut in the way he expected. There was a searing heat, an intense pressure against his chest. It felt like being branded, like his very essence was being seared and reformed. He gasped, his eyes flying open. The entity loomed over him, its featureless helmet head inches from his face. The red cracks on its form pulsed rhythmically in time with his own frantic heartbeat. He could smell ozone and something else, burning paper, burning ink. Then the pressure receded. Reality greed drew back its wing. Elias clawed at his chest, expecting to find a gaping wound. His shirt was singed, torn, but beneath it his skin was strangely intact, yet it burned. He stumbled to the small mirror by the coat rack. With trembling hands he pulled aside the ruined fabric. There, imprinted on his skin as if tattooed by fire, was an image. Clear, undeniable. It was the face of Benjamin Franklin from a $500 bill. The lines were perfect, the scroll work, the stern gaze of the long-dead statesman. It was a mark, a brand, a claim. He was owned. His soul forfeit for the greed he had embraced. The horror of it was beyond anything he could have imagined. This wasn't just death or injury. This was a defilement, a permanent, visible testament to his corruption. Reality greed watched him, its silence more terrifying than any roar. It had collected its due. No, Section 8. The empty chair, the lingering chill, aftermath of horror. The next morning, Elias Vance's office was quiet, too quiet. His colleagues found his chair empty. His computer was still on, displaying the uncompleted illegal transfer. His coat was still on the rack. But Elias was gone, vanished. There were no signs of struggle, no forced entry, just an empty space where a man used to be. And a faint, lingering chill in the air that no amount of sunlight could dispel. A faint, almost imperceptible smell of burnt paper. The police were called. They investigated, they found no leads. Elias Vance had simply disappeared off the face of the earth. His bank accounts were untouched, save for the pending illegal transfer he never completed. His apartment was undisturbed. It was as if he had evaporated. Some whispered he'd fled, fearing discovery of his attempted crime. Others, who had seen the growing darkness in his eyes, suspected something far worse. Something that couldn't be explained by conventional logic. One janitor, cleaning late that night, found something peculiar. Tucked deep into the waste bin, beneath discarded papers, was a single, crisp, $500 bill. It looked old, but perfectly preserved. He almost pocketed it, but there was something about it. The way the light caught Benjamin Franklin's eyes, they seemed to watch him, to judge him. He felt a sudden, inexplicable wave of nausea, and threw it back in the trash, his hand trembling. He never spoke of it. The story of Elias Vance became a cautionary tale, a ghost story for the modern age of financial ruin. People spoke of the pressures of the market, of how greed could drive a man to madness or to simply run away, but a few, those who had felt the subtle wrongness in the world, who had heard the whispers of impossible prices, knew better. They knew Elias hadn't just run, he had been taken, claimed by the dark entity that fed on avarice. Reality greed had collected another soul, leaving only dread behind. Section 9, A Contagion of Desire, the Unseen Entity's Enduring Reign. The disappearance of Elias Vance was not an isolated incident. Similar stories began to surface from other cities, other countries. Individuals, consumed by a sudden, overwhelming greed, would vanish. Sometimes a pristine $500 bill would be found nearby. Sometimes nothing but an echo of their desperate ambition. The world remained largely oblivious. These were just statistics. Unfortunate souls lost to the pressures of a volatile economy. They didn't see the pattern. They didn't see the hand of reality greed. The entity itself remained elusive. A phantom of the financial world. It had no headquarters, no army. Its weapons were the prices themselves. Its battlefield was the human mind. It thrived in the shadows of towering skyscrapers, in the desperate silence of empty wallets, in the envious glances between colleagues. It was a contagion of desire, spreading silently and visibly. The more outrageous the prices became, the more fertile the ground for its influence. The cycle was self-perpetuating. The terror it inspired was not just a physical harm, it was a deeper psychological horror. The fear of losing oneself, the fear of becoming a slave to one's own insatiable wants. The fear that the very system designed for prosperity was now a hunting ground for an ancient, malevolent force. This fear was a constant, low hum beneath the surface of society. It manifested as heightened anxiety, as pervasive distrust, as a gnawing sense that something was fundamentally, terrifyingly wrong with the world. And so, reality greed continues its reign, unseen by most, unacknowledged, but its presence is felt in every inflated price tag, in every desperate gamble, in every soul that succumbs to the crushing weight of want. The $500 bill is its calling card, a symbol of its chilling power. The mystery of its ultimate purpose remains. But one thing is certain, as long as greed exists, as long as prices defy reason, the dark entity of black glass and burning red cracks will be there, watching, waiting, hungry.